the MOD is carrying out a review, a copy has obviously gone to them, may have gone to some more people also. And in this day and age, hacking is very much possible. Anybody can, brandish any book or quote any author. That does not mean everyone has to respond to those comments. We have seen so many more serious situations, life and death situations on the field. And in comparison to that, nothing more can shock us. I don't think I need to explain anything to anyone. Why should I explain anything to anyone? I have done what I had to do. Whatever will happen, will happen. Ki sara sara. Don't read success stories. Read failure stories. One of the lessons that we learned is the requirement of having more surveillance capability at the lower level. And that is why immediately we started procuring drones. There is a difference between a salute and a salam. You are not kowtowing to anybody. A salute is given with your head held high, with your chest out. So Ram House in Meerut is situated on the Mall Road. Ram House is written on the wall. The locals read it as Ram and reverentially bow their heads when they are passing by.
Hello and welcome to HT's weekly talk show, The Interview. It is rare that men in the forces grab headlines. Equally, activities within the army rarely reach parliament. But this is exactly what happened when a retired general turned the tables on the government, allegedly. General Manoj Naravane. Does the name ring a bell? It has to, because his unpublished book had stalled parliament. General Naravane has served as chief of the army staff. It was leader of the opposition, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, who rapped the government for its inaction in Galwan. Gandhi's allegations were based on the retired general's book, 4 Stars of Destiny. What actually happened? Who said what? And why the furor? What is the government hiding? Or is it? In a tell-all interview, the general talks about both his unpublished and published book, about what happened and what did not. He tells us the story of Badluram, also talks to us about Chak De Fatte and how critical is it to return a salute, and of course, not to forget the Do Botal Teen Glass anecdote. General Naravane is here with us as our guest in this edition of HT's weekly talk show, The Interview. Welcome to the show, General Naravane, and thank you for being here with us.
No, it's my pleasure, and it's very kind of you to take the trouble of coming all the way to speak to me. So thank you.
You are in the news yet again, but let me take you back a few months. What was the controversy surrounding your earlier book all about? Just set the record straight. Give us your version, the unfiltered one.
Well, now that you have asked that question, I will definitely answer it. As far as this book is concerned, the unpublished one, the 4 Stars of Destiny, I think Penguin, the publishers, have made it very clear that no copies of that book in any form, whether in print, electronic, PDF or anything, were ever circulated to anybody. In fact, I have myself not seen my own book. So, you can now draw your own conclusions.
But tell me, how did the leak, if I may use the term, actually happen? How could it have happened?
Well, that's for the authorities to, look into. But I am quite sure that a very reputed publisher like Penguin would not do anything like this, leaking something just because it is under review by the MOD. How it has happened, it is for the authorities to investigate, and I'm sure they are doing that.
Two things in this. One, the MOD, for whatever reasons, took very long, almost over a year, in fact, nearly 2 years now. So maybe somebody's patience was running out. The other, was there a possibility of hacking?
Could be because after all, if the MOD is carrying out a review, a copy has obviously gone to them. And within the MOD, it probably may have gone to some more people also. And in this day and age, hacking is very much possible. And having hacked into and obtained a illegal a version of the copy illegally, it is then equally possible to change the words in that manuscript. Therefore, if something is being quoted, how correct it is or how wrong it is, unless you sit down with the two copies side by side, would be difficult to predict. But yes, a possibility of hacking is very much there.
In hindsight or looking back, would you say you were terribly misquoted? Or were you misquoted? Or was the interpretation different?
I would rather put it in the light of interpreting it in different ways. As they say, you can, the glass, you can see it half full, you can see it half empty.
Rahul Gandhi saw it half empty.
Always want to see things at a half empty and in a negative light or give it a negative connotation. Then that is a personal viewpoint which you cannot really change.
What do you think was the game plan? One fine morning, quietly sitting at home, you suddenly grabbed headlines. You suddenly stalled Parliament. What happened that morning?
In fact, not only was I quietly sitting at home, I didn't even know anything like this was brewing till some friends and well-wishers started ringing me up that, do you know what is happening? I said, no, what is happening? So really it was no skin off my back. Anybody can, brandish any book or quote any author. That does not mean everyone has to respond to those comments or things like that. So I am quite happy and leading a peaceful life. But as far as the politicization of the armed forces are concerned, that is something which is best avoided. Because if there is one thing which makes our country stand out from the other countries in the neighborhood, is the fact that our armed forces have remained apolitical throughout. So let us keep it at that and not drag army into politics.
My earlier question about the MOD taking so long to clear what, in a sense, was a non-controversial book till this controversy or these few paragraphs were pulled out and probably further either delayed the clearance or maybe it may not ever happen.
Now, we are only looking at a couple of paragraphs. Perhaps there are more passages or more chapters or more issues need more deliberation or which needs more looking into. After all, when anybody says or does something or writes something, he writes it from his perspective and with the level at which he is, he or she. So obviously the way a young captain would look at a particular incident would be different from how a senior officer would look at it, would be different from how I would look at it, and would be different when you see it at a diplomatic or political level. And there could be definitely more such issues which require a more thorough vetting to see if it is going to have any repercussions or ramifications in the long run. So I have always maintained that there is no harm in doing a vetting. It's totally their prerogative.
Yeah, that is fine. But what about the timeline? It's just taken so long. And it's a good book which seems to have been killed before it.
No, I have always said my book is maturing like fine wine.
So you think 4 stars of destiny are going to be matured like fine wine? Or is it going to be a bottle which will be trashed?
No, not at all.
You have hope it will be out.
Of course. Hope is eternal.
And people will get legitimate copies.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, corrupted or pirated version of the PDF copy has been circulating online. But my friends have told me that although they have access to it, they said we will, as a matter of principle, have decided that we will not read it.
Hasn't the controversy really helped the book? One, your friends or people who are known to you, even as a matter of principle, no one will buy pirated copies. And second, everyone will reach out for the book once it's out.
Well, let's hope so.
So, in one sense, hasn't Mr. Rahul Gandhi done a favor?
That time will tell.
Tell me, let me take you back to that morning when friends rang up and said, have you seen what's happened? How did you react? The first 5-10 minutes, what happened? How long did it take you to digest and comprehend what was really happening till you put it together?
Nothing really. I was only amused by the whole episode. As I said, it's nothing to do with directly with me or my involvement.
You were not shocked?
I was not shocked. In fact, I carried on with my normal routine. We have seen so many more serious situations
On the field.
on the field. And in comparison to that, nothing more can shock us.
But did it take an emotional toll on you?
No, not at all. I'm telling you that. And people somehow
You
don't.
didn't have a sleepless night that night?
Not a single sleepless night. So, but that's not my doing. So, why should I have the sleepless nights?
To be fair, you were in a strange situation, sought after in kind of a blue eyed boy of the opposition and untouchable by the government. Strange predicament, highly avoidable. So, just explain this, as it was seen as if the opposition is speaking for you and the government is saying, oh my God, what has happened?
No, I don't think that is a correct way of looking at it at all. In fact, the government has come out wholeheartedly in my support. So, I don't think
Later, much
there is
later.
any predicament at all.
But much later.
It takes time. It's not that something happens and you have to comment immediately. So, everyone does discuss and deliberate about matters, and they have come out fully in my support.
Blue eyed boy of the opposition?
I don't think so. I'm anybody's blue eyed boy, although I'm wearing blue.
Many feel that you are on the defensive and you didn't speak then. Of course, now you're speaking because you want to talk about your new book. Fair enough. But at that point, you said very little or perhaps said nothing for the first few days. So, why this kind of explanations now? Are you on the defensive?
No, not at all. In fact, not only did I not speak on the first few days, I have not spoken at all. And had this new book not been released, I would have not have probably been speaking even today. I am not in a hurry to speak to anybody, and I don't think I am obliged to speak on every little thing that happens.
You now say that you were not abandoned by the government. This is kind of what many say, and if you will allow me to use the word, a U-turn from what the book seems to imply. And I quote, "Jo uchit samjho wo karo." So the political leadership kind of abandoned the army on the Chinese aggression in Galwan.
Again, this is a totally incorrect interpretation. There is no kind of abandonment. It is the operational freedom which is given. In that operational freedom, then the decision lies on the chief to take a decision. So, in that sense, the buck stops with you. And there is a term for this which is called the loneliness of command. Whoever is at the top is always lonely. The man at the top is always alone. It is in that sense that you're alone at the top, not that you're abandoned by anyone.
I was handed a hot potato, quote unquote, is what you have said. Just explain this to me.
No, again, that is in that context that, ultimately now the decision is on your head. So that is the hot potato.
You said that the Jo Uchit Samjho remark is the government's faith in the army, which is contrary to being handed a hot potato, like you had said earlier. To me, it is like a contradiction.
Faith in the army, the government has full faith. But when tough decisions have to be taken, then it is on your shoulder, and then you feel that the weight of that responsibility.
So the hot potato is the weight of the responsibility, and Jo Uchit Samjho is the faith the government has.
Quite right.
Though the impression initially was the contrary.
Anybody can think what they want. I really don't mind.
But you think it was a misinterpretation at that time also? Or later you thought, or maybe it was important to correct that perception because it was the army which was involved?
I don't think I need to explain anything to anyone. Why should I explain anything to anyone? I have done what I had to do as the army chief. I'm quite happy with the way things turned out in the end, and they turned out in our favor.
Why do you say that?
Why? Because the PLA withdrew. What can be more important than that? That is nothing short of an outright victory.
Before I move on to the current book, isn't it a fact that precious time was lost and orders did not come? And the government took at least almost an hour to say, Jo Uchit Samjho Karo. Would you call that close coordination between the government and the army, as you would now want us to believe?
When situations are unfolding, there has to be a space between the situation developing and the decision being given. And that space can vary.
1 hour, when The tanks have nearly reached the doorstep.
In critical situations, it might be an instantaneous decision that is required. You see someone in front, you can't ask, But when the situation evolving, yes, when various other factors have to be borne in mind and more deliberations have to be done, possibly more consultations with other persons, inter-ministerial consultations perhaps going on behind the scenes, then it's quite possible that more time is required. But ultimately, the orders came in time and we were able to respond in time. So let us see at the end result. Why are we looking at the process? The outcome was favorable. Let us be happy about that. Let us not try to split hair whether it took 1 hour or 25 minutes.
As a general, would you say that 1 hour was critical and in one sense should have happened earlier and precious time was lost?
Every minute is critical.
So that 1 hour is far more than a minute.
But again, why are we getting bogged down in 1 minute or 1 hour? Look at the outcome. Outcome is favorable. We should be happy with that.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. How much do you hold Mr. Rahul Gandhi responsible for stalling the publication of the book? Had he not raised a hue and cry, there would be no controversy and perhaps the book would see the light of the day. Are you angry at what happened?
I do not hold anyone responsible for anything. Whatever will happen, will happen. Ki sara sara.
Have you ever spoken to Mr. Rahul Gandhi? Did he contact you at any point? Why didn't you ask him to stop doing what he was doing?
As I said, why should I? Nobody has spoken to me. Why do I have to react?
But have you ever spoken to Mr.
I
Gandhi?
have never spoken to him.
Has he ever tried to contact
I have
you?
never spoken to him in my life.
Has he ever tried to contact you?
Negative.
You've been in charge of key operations like the border standoff with China. Take us through some challenging moments, some army stories, and tell us about Galwan.
With China, we have a very unsettled boundary and both sides patrol up to their claim line. So it is very often that the patrolling parties from either side come close to each other. And when that happens, there is always a, sort of a clash or a face-off. Most times these are diffused amicably with nothing more than a few fisticuffs or something like that. But sometimes it also goes out of hand. So those are the tensions that are there in the border almost every day. We only talk about Galwan. There are many areas all across this more than 2,000 kilometers of boundary. And there are places in Sikkim, there are places in Arunachal. And even after Galwan, in the Yangtze area, after I had retired in December 22, there was a major clash. So these things are happening off and on. So it is not that it was not happening in the past and that it will not happen in the future.
Any particular incident where a bitter lesson was learnt or any lesson was learnt?
We learn lessons every time, as our former president APJ Abdul Kalam had said that don't read success stories, read failure stories.
Will you take us through one failure story?
One of the lessons that we learned is the requirement of having more surveillance capability at the lower level. And that is why immediately we started procuring drones. And within 6 months, the first drones were in service. So that is how fast we learned and adapted and implemented.
And around when did this happen and why? Where were we caught unawares?
It is not that you are caught unawares. That is the lesson learned. It is not that if you knew about it, then you would not be caught unaware.
Sure.
So you are always developing your capabilities. And this is one lesson, that had we had better surveillance capability at the lower levels.
And around which year was this?
Again, 2020.
So that actually was the turning point of many, many things which needed correction.
I would not say correction, because correction means you know that there is a mistake and you're not doing anything about it. But in a fluid battlefield situation, and warfare is always evolving, so new challenges come up. And whenever there's a new challenge, then you have to address it. So it is not a mistake or a correction. It is a continuous process of evolution.
Now I'm going to keep my promise of talking about your current and latest book, The Curious and the Classified, the myths and memories and the legends that shaped the army. Tell me about some high points of this book and tell me about some gaps which you think should have been filled up, have been left, and probably in the next editions you would do that. Let's talk about the high points first.
The thought or the idea behind this book came when I happened to see Shashi Tharoor's book, A Wonderland of Words. And he talks about backronyms, how SOS, it was reverse engineered to say save our souls. So immediately the thought came to my mind that we have so many backronyms in the army. For example, MAU, it's a very big military garrison near Indore, where everyone says it's military headquarters of war.
Which is incorrect.
Which is totally a myth and totally incorrect. The officers' mess, MESS, say members of equal social status, which is also equally and in similar.
So MESS, just explain that to me.
That is officers' mess. That is a place where all officers dine in the unit, especially the ones who are single. In the mess, you're all equals. There's no senior, no junior.
So what is the misinterpretation?
Word mess has its own linguistic origins.
Which is?
Which is from, Latin mess. It was also when a kind of dish was made mixing all things together which looked like a mess. So let us got various possible origins. But somebody, because we are treated as equals, made this backronym of members of equal social status, which is again totally a myth.
So what are the other high points of this book, which you think, if I were to buy it, why would I buy this book?
The book comprises 25 chapters and each is a story. And each story is connected to military history. And through that, how our traditions, our customs, our ethos, what drives the armed forces, these factors come out very much. Also, since these are 25, self-contained story from all parts of India. So I think everyone will be able to identify very closely with one. So now there is a chapter called Bangalore Torpedo. I think all Bangaloreans will want to read that chapter.
That was the one with which has a connection to World War One. Tell me that story.
So in World War One, the trench warfare, the main impediment to the attacks were the large barbed wire obstacles and entanglements which separated the two lines. So we had to be found to clear that obstacle, because when people would charge, they would get entangled and trapped on that barbed wire and then shot like ducks. So a engineer of the Royal Bengal Engineers stationed at Bangalore devised apparatus, which is simply he filled a tube, a small cylindrical tube with explosives with screws at the end, so that a number of segments could be screwed together and from the safety of your own lines pushed slowly and steadily into the barbed wire and then set off. So when it is set off, it would make that gap of a couple of meters through which then you could charge. And because it was invented in Bangalore, it got the name of Bangalore Torpedo. Torpedo was anything cylindrical filled with explosive was torpedo. So therefore the two got juxtaposed and became Bangalore Torpedo. Not only used in First World War, used in Second World War, and is still in the armies of the world today, so many years later. So that is, Bangalore Torpedo.
Before I come to the other Chakte Phatte, etc. stories, let me ask you, in these 25 chapters, which is your favorite story? And which is the one which was very difficult to write?
Well, favorite story is Chakde Phatte, which I was commissioned to the Sikh Light Infantry, and Chakde Phatte was something we used to always, say amongst ourselves. The most difficult, probably the ones dealing with the Air Force and Navy, because I'm not so conversant with those, which required more due diligence on my part not to get things wrong.
So why did you venture into that area which was actually not yours in one sense?
Because those are also stories to be told. For example, the story of INS Kukri, where the captain of the ship, Captain Mullah, goes down with the ship in the highest traditions of the Navy. But is this a rule that the captain always has to go down with the ship? This tradition of the captain going down for the ship, it evolved over years, and it is only a custom or tradition. It is not a written rule that you have to die. That is.
Okay.
Yeah. So it again has roots in history. There was a steamship which was carrying pilgrims to Jeddah, and off the Horn of Africa, it runs into a terrible storm. And the captain of the ship, scared for his own life, along with one or two crew members, lowers a lifeboat and disappears, leaving the ship to its fate. And he reaches the port of Aden, where he tells everyone that the ship has sunk and we are the only survivors. His misfortune, when the storm abates, another British ship which is passing by tows that ship to safety, again to the port of Aden only. So that becomes a big scandal of the times, that how can the captain abandon ship? He should be the last one to go. So, and of course he is court-martialed. So that is the origin of the thing, that, captain can't leave. That got even more romanticized with the sinking of the Titanic, where the captain stayed on board till the end. These myths built up that no, whatever happens, the captain must go down. But that is not a rule. If you have done your best, and if having done that, while the ship is sinking, if the captain can be rescued, why not? A life is a life.
Tell me about the much spoken about story, Chak De Phatte.
When we were in the NDA and we used to have a sports competition, to cheer up our teams, we used to keep shouting, Chak De Phatte, Chak De Phatte. I used to also shout that without knowing what it's all about. So during the Sikh Mughal wars, Sikhs would conduct these lightning raids on the Mughal camps. And then while going back after conducting these raids, they would remove the planks from the wooden bridges that the Mughals had constructed so that they could not follow them. So when they used to head back, then they used to shout to each other, Chak De Phatte, that take out the planks or destroy the bridge. So that is how it came
Originated.
in the lexicon, which now we just use it as an exhortation.
Cheering a team.
Cheering a team, get the dance floor moving, But as I said, it's deeply rooted in military history.
What about Badlu Ram?
Badlu Ram was a Sipahi, a soldier in the Assam regiment, who dies in the early stages of battle. But his name doesn't get struck off the rolls. And your rations which are supplied are totally based on that day's or that week's number of people held. So his rations keep coming. But when the garrison is besieged and no more supplies are forthcoming, it is this man's extra rations of those many days that helps the remainder people survive. And the Battle of Kohima was actually a question of just 1 or 2 days. Who could have lasted longer? And that is how these people last longer. Later on, this aspect comes to light, much after the battle is over. An Englishman pens down a song, Badlu Ram Ka Badan. It's set to a very upbeat song. The beat is very catchy, and it is now the regimental song of the Assam regiment, which is played in all their functions. Badlu Ram was not a hero in that sense. He did not do any heroic act, but his heroism was in feeding his company even when he was dead.
So coming back to Do Botal Teen Glass story. Tell me about that. Then tell me about the confusion of Ram and Ram.
Do Botal Teen Glass is a very unique custom or tradition which was there in the army. But when you had to go on leave, then the young officer had to apply through the chain. The leave application goes to the adjutant, then to the second in command, and then to the commanding officer, who then just signs off. And then it was a custom that these 3 officers, that the officer requesting for leave, the adjutant and the 2IC, would share 2 bottles of beer amongst the 3 of them.
Now, what is the logic of this?
Yes, so the logic of this is of sharing.
Does that custom still exist?
At some units do still follow it.
How often have you been part of the Do Botal Teen Glass?
That is how I remember this story, because I have been part and parcel of it.
What about the Ram and Ram confusion?
Part, so
that's another interesting story.
Every division in the Indian Army has something called a formation sign, which is worn on the left shoulder and which has an emblem on it. So that emblem can be an object like a key, it can be an animal like an elephant, and a tree.
So what does that signify?
It signifies that anybody who is wearing that formation sign belongs to that formation. So it is a badge of identity. So if 2 Corps, which I also happen to command, 2 Corps was raised shortly before the 71 war.
Okay.
and it was raised in West Bengal in Krishnanagar. So the Maharaja of Krishnanagar gave a kharga, that is a type of a dagger of Kali, to the person who raised the corps, which was General Raina, who later on became the chief. So General Raina made that as the formation of 2 corps.
Okay.
And that original silver kharga is still in the officers' mess at Ambala. The formation sign of Eastern Command is the rising sun.
What about the pine tree?
Pine tree must have been chosen by that whoever raised the Pine Division, which is located at Meerut. Another formation which is in Meerut is the Ram Division, because their formation sign is a charging ram. And the custom is that whatever is the formation sign, the institutions of that division take that name. So if your formation is the Pine, the place where the commander stays becomes Pine House.
Okay.
So if your formation sign is the Ram, then where you're staying becomes a Ram House. So Ram House in Meerut is situated on the Mall Road. So it is the Ram House guarded by a sentry, and the commander's name and Ram House are written on the wall. But people who are strolling, the locals, they don't read it as Ram. They read it as Ram. They think it is Ram House and reverentially bow their heads when they're passing by, or do a namaste and then go. And from the names that also has various, we tease each other, like the division in Dehradun, their formation sign is a golden key. So we keep saying कि आपकी तो चाबी लगी रहती है.
What about Dhai Murti?
That's another story which has its roots in Second World War. Japanese were advancing through Burma. Not only was the British forces withdrawing, but along with them, a lot of refugees were also withdrawing. So this unit of the Assam Rifles, they stepped in and they helped hundreds of refugees cross 10, 15 swollen streams, battling wild animal, leeches, and starvation, and got them to safety to India. So the Burmese authorities and the planters, in token of appreciation, gave some silver coins to Assam Rifles, not Assam Rifles. And that regiment converted into a trophy.
Okay.
Now, the interesting part is, what do you mean Dhai?
I was just going to ask that.
In Delhi, you have 11 Murti, 11 statues. Very easy to understand. What is this half? So the statue is a Assam Rifle soldier, kukri in hand, leading a lady, a refugee, and on his shoulder is a small boy. So he is the half. The original is, of course, with the unit, but the life-size replica of that is in the Assam Rifle Center in Shillong at their war memorial.
Tell me, General, were these stories something which had to be researched? Did you have to go back to lots of things which you didn't know, or were they top of the mind as far as you were concerned?
I served in almost all areas of the country. So I was in Assam Rifles myself. Most of these stories I've served in those areas, so I knew. But
so they were automatic in a sense.
Yes, quite a lot of them were, as I said right in the beginning, already had 10, 12 at the top of my mind. It was not just recounting a story. It was also weaving it from the past to the present.
How critical is it to return a salute? Is something which finds mention in the book again.
So saluting is a very important aspect of army life, and I think everyone must be saluting at least 10 times a day. But the salute is not a subversive. It is not there is a difference between a salute and a salam.
Okay, just explain that.
You are not kowtowing to anybody. A salute is given with your head held high, with your chest out, and every salute has to be returned. It's mutual respect. But a salam, people bowing very deferentially in front, saying that I am below you, in a way. So that is not a salute. A salute is, I am equal to you, but yes, you are by rank, you are superior. That is why I will obey whatever orders you give. We insist that a salute should be given in a very decorous manner and as taught, and not very flippantly that or something. It has to be done the way it is supposed
and
to
it
be
must
done.
be replied.
And it must be replied, returned.
Let me ask you, this transition from army, from a soldier to an author, From holding a gun to handling a pen, how did it work?
It's not that I suddenly decided one fine day to write. I had written a couple of short stories earlier. When I was a colonel, my mother used to write a lot of short stories. She was a acclaimed Marathi short story writer. My inclination and my hobby was writing, and I've carried it forward.
You said writing is your passion. So, is that other book because of that passion, or because it is the timing, or because it's the fact that the earlier one is pending publication? So, write another one.
No, it was no connection of that kind.
It was not that telling the MOD, you stop one book and I'll do the other. Kind of settling a score.
No, no. Why should I settle scores?
Your hard work, sweat and blood is in the MOD, lying there.
I've been the chief of the army, so why should I settle scores with anybody?
So, why did you change the publisher? Is it because Penguin now was scared and you were too hot to
No,
handle?
the sequel to the murder mysteries with Penguin only.
No, but then that was before the controversy. But this one is not.
This one is not, because my editor in Rupa is an ex-army officer. So she grasped the concept immediately.
But tell me, from bullets, blood, gun, fire shots to the world of words, how does it feel?
In the army, we are not at war all the time. So it's not that we are firing bullets every day. So that is, periods of violence or tension or brief interludes in a longer peaceful period. People don't realize the costs of war, which we do. The costs are not only the equipment lost, there are also social costs of war. When a person dies in battle, the costs which are borne by his family, his parents, his children, nobody talks about those. As army people, we ourselves would say that that should be the last option. We are not warmongers.
How does the no firing without orders rule work on the ground, and how often does it work?
You see, we have different rules of engagement. The rules of engagement difference in counter-terrorist operations. The rules of engagement will also differ based on the adversary that you are facing. And there are levels of delegation. And within those levels of delegation, there is no question of waiting for orders. If there is a terrorist in front of you, you are going to kill him. No questions asked. But under certain circumstances, if there are chances of escalation, then it is perhaps worthwhile referring to your superior. And that is when you are looking for clarification. It is not that no firing without orders. You are allowed to fire, but commanders are expected to also exercise their discretion when faced with a situation and not be gung-ho all the time that I have been told I can fire, so I will fire.
How often do political decisions influence the decisions which have to be taken on the ground?
I don't think there is any
Hard and fast rule?
a hard and fast rule or any direct influence or interference. We are working every day under the directions of the Raksha Mantri. So we know general, what is the trend, what is the course of action to be followed. So to that extent, yes, you have to maintain an even keel, and in doing so, do what is best in the long term and for the greater good of the country.
So, is there a great political interface when the army is on the ground?
No, once we are on the ground, we are on the ground. It is only the military hierarchy and the military chain of command that works. Nothing.
So,
in
at what
between.
stage does the political interface, and I'm not using the word interference, interface come in?
The political interface is at the level of the Raksha Mantri and the Cabinet Committee of Security, on which all the ministries are part, all the secretaries are part, and of course the service chiefs and the CDS are part of that.
How often does that conflict, how often does the political interface or political policy conflict with the armed forces?
I don't think there is any conflict, because the decisions which are arrived at the CCS have been with due deliberation.
Usually on the same page?
Usually on the same page, after taking everybody's viewpoint, and then it's up to you to go and implement it on the ground.
What about a commander's freedom to respond to hostility? In Galwan, for instance, Indian troops were ordered to fight without firearms. And they fought hand to hand.
That is not a correct statement.
Okay.
All troops, whenever they go fully equipped with arms, ammunition, equipment, all that is required for their task.
Okay.
So that we said that they were unarmed or were told not to fight with firearms is very incorrect reporting.
I'm glad you're setting the record straight, because the impression really was that they fought hand to hand with iron rods and even stones. Is that right?
Yes, they were armed, but because of the protocols which are in place, which was that when these face-offs happen, which I mentioned earlier, the protocols which are in place, one of them sub-paras of that is that we will not resort to firing. And therefore, the troops on ground, when faced with a situation like this, did what they thought best, and we should not try to second guess them. So if they did what they did, full marks to them.
But they did fight hand to hand
With
and
whatever
iron rods.
with whatever was at their disposal at that point of time.
But they were armed.
They were armed. We are always armed.
The "Ghar mein ghus ke marenge" phrase was coined by the Indian government. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, in the context of Pakistan. But let me ask you, how does it work both for Pakistan and China?
This is more in context of the anti-terrorist action that we have taken. After the Uri attack, we had carried out surgical strikes, but those were on the camps which were quite close to the LC. We did cross the LC, but to a very shallow depth. After Pulwama, the strikes in Balakot were again restricted to terrorist camps and minor infrastructure, and again only in POK. But after Pahalgam, when we struck targets, not only those terrorist camps, but also in the heartland of Pakistan. It was a shift in our strategy that we will not only target those minor people on the line of control, but we will hit you wherever you are. You are not safe anywhere. And that is the meaning of ghus ghus kar marenge. That don't think you are going to be safe if you try these stunts, and we will not differentiate between a terrorist financer, a supporter, a sponsor, and the whole chain of that terrorism will be targeted. And that is a very good change which has come in our policy, that we are now hitting them where it hurts. Two terrorists dying somewhere, it doesn't hurt them, but now it is hurting.
So, "Ghar mein ghus ke marenge" actually was originally for Pakistan, but does it or can it apply to China as well?
No, it doesn't apply to them because it is particularly related to counter-terrorist operations.
But don't you think China also should get that "Ghar mein ghus ke marenge," considering the kind of things and activities they continue on the border?
It was not said in context of China. It was only said in context of Pakistan.
But what would you say for China?
For China, I think all the action that we have taken have very clearly demonstrated that a military solution to the boundary issue is no longer possible. So it's better to go in for a negotiated settlement. बात करने में ही समझदारी है.
General, I can't thank you enough for your time, because I know I have exceeded the limit, and for answering each and every question of mine, however controversial.
Thank you. I have enjoyed talking about it. I hope everybody enjoys listening to it.
I'm quite sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.